You are Black in the Green Room with me, your host, Keith Underwood. And this is your spot for real talk about entertainment with entertainers, creatives, and showbiz professionals. Today, we're joined by Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas, who represents California's 28th Senate District, which includes South Los Angeles, Mid-City, Culver City, West Los Angeles, Century City, and downtown Los Angeles. Senator Smallwood-Cuevas has built her career as a powerful advocate for worker rights and racial equity. In addition to her leadership on issues of labor and workforce justice, she has recently taken a stand on two groundbreaking fronts. First, California's newly expanded $750 million film and television tax credit program, and second, her visionary push to state designate historic South Los Angeles as a Black cultural district, the first of its kind in California. We're going to talk about both of these game-changing initiatives and what they mean for Black creatives, Black business, and the preservation of our cultural history. Senator, welcome to Black in the Green Room.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to be with you this morning and to celebrate some victories. They're hard to come by these days. It's been very difficult for California, as you have seen on the news, and particularly for so many of our leaders in Los Angeles. But we have some good news to share, and I really appreciate you having me this morning to talk about it.
Absolutely, most definitely, most definitely. So, talk to me a little bit about your background and how that led you to politics.
Sure. So, my role here in the California State Senate, I am the sixth Black woman to serve in the California State Senate. I'm the first Black woman to chair the Senate's Labor Committee. I sit on the Budget Committee and am a part of a number of committees that really look at ways to improve the lives of Californians. And I came here, and I want to say it's an evolution of movement. I grew up politically unionizing workers. I began as a worker myself. I was a journalist. I
Mm.
worked for the Bob Maynard Oakland Tribune and then the Long Beach Press Telegram and later the Chicago Tribune. I was a member of the Newspaper Guild, very active as the industry was collapsing. And I realized how important it was as a worker to move collectively to save our jobs. And in the real stake of it, save the First Amendment and newspapers in this country.
Hmm.
With the internet and so many other disruptions, we did not succeed in saving many of our newspapers. And I ended up working on a project as a researcher with SEIU
Mm.
and began
Edwardsville.
working for the union and never looked back, working with the Justice for Janitors Union, organizing largely Black security officers in South Central Los Angeles, the first unionization campaign in decades to focus on predominantly Black workers. In the end, we were able to unionize over 4,000 of those men and women, many living in South LA, to ensure that they had fair wages, working conditions, and dignity and voice on their jobs. So very proud of that. I went on to found the Center for the Advancement for Racial Equity at Work, which is a research center over at the UCLA Labor Center, where we focus on unemployed and underemployed workers and really look at the jobs crisis in the Black community and
Mm.
how employers and unions can work together to intervene. And that research led me to helping to found California's first Black worker center here. And it became a model across the country. And when Obama was in office, we grew from one worker center to 17 worker centers
Mm.
across the country. So being in the state Senate is a continuation of that work, fighting for working people, fighting to address disparities in our economy, which at the root of it is a lack of good and quality careers in our neighborhoods. Far too many of our young people not having access and the skills to build meaningful, sustainable careers that support their families. And my role here in the state Senate is to make sure that as we are looking at every bill that comes across my desk, I'm looking at it through that lens, the lens of working people, of underrepresented and disadvantaged communities. And what
Mm.
can we do with our public investments to turn that into an opportunity for real self-sustainability and community uplift. I am convinced that when we lift our vulnerable communities, which too often are at the bottom, when we raise their livelihood and opportunity, we lift livelihood and opportunity for everyone. And so, as the 28th District Representative, which houses South Central Los Angeles, Culver City and Mar
Mm.
Vista, LA Live, downtown, our financial districts, I'm in a perfect position, right, to bring our economies together. And I think the 28th is a mighty, mighty district. It's the most diverse in the state. We have some of the wealthiest and some of the poorest communities in the country. And it is on us and on my leadership to figure out solutions that allow all of our Angelenos and Culver City residents to thrive. So that is, how I came to this work. I'm very proud of this work. Daughter of a single mom, joined the Navy, came to California. I know I'm doing my mother proud, and I hope to be always doing the constituents of the 28th District proud.
You're very welcome. So, Senator, to begin with, what exactly is California's newly expanded film and television tax credit program, and why is it so important right now?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked, and I see your Hollywood sign
That's
there on
right.
the wall.
Yeah.
How fitting for this
Yes.
discussion. But it really is about thinking about, let's think about a sound stage, and we think about the light typically being a spotlight that shines on the main actor,
Hmm.
and they are in that closed shot, right? What the film and television film tax credit program does, it sort of zooms out and it illuminates everyone else that's in that production, the
Mm.
writers, the cinematographers, the makeup artist, the camera folks, the folks who are managing the lighting, um, all of those individuals. And part of my work is not just to illuminate all of those folks below the line who are making the
Mm.
production happen, but also to zoom out enough that we can get to the margins, right? And we can see Black creatives. We can see Black entrepreneurs who, want to be engaged in the film industry and have so much to contribute to a diverse film industry. So to me, that's really what the film and television tax does. It helps us to zoom out and to be more inclusive in ensuring that as we make a public investment in our film and television industry, that industry in turns helps us to build a more vibrant, a more inclusive workforce that brings in neighborhoods like, South Central Los Angeles that I represent. Um, at its core, what the film tax credit did was increase the state's investment from $330 million over 3 years to $750 million. A combined total, we say, of, about $1 billion
Right.
to invest in expanding and making our film industry more competitive across the country. Although this is a homegrown industry, we built this industry.
Hmm.
You think about the golden age of Hollywood. In recent years, with technology, with so many advancements in a global economy, now we are competing with, Ireland and England, France, as well as Atlanta and Illinois,
Hmm.
Arizona,
New
for
York.
business, New York, for business that was once really solidly just all of a California stronghold. So
Hmm.
this, as other states have found and used incentives to bring our business out of California and into their communities, California had to fight back. We had to
Mm.
make sure that we were holding on to California jobs. We wanted to hold on to making sure that we gave a competitive edge. And we also wanted to make sure that this was about California workers, because there's no point in having an industry if Californians are not employed. And by Californians, we mean all Californians. So for
Hmm.
me, the tax credit was about the competition. It was about making sure we had a winning edge, but also that this was a jobs program.
Hmm. Yeah, we often hear about the broader sense of initiatives, but how does this one actually work?
So the way this actually works, and it's a very complex process, we have a California Film Commission that oversees this process. And essentially what it does is it incentivizes by creating some tax relief, giving a tax credit that would amount to about we went from 20 to 25%, which is what our last iteration of the film tax credit did, to about 30 to 35% in tax credit. So a production could come to us. They would have to meet certain metrics, which we'll talk about. But essentially, the state of California would allow them to have a refundable tax credit that basically helps to offset about 35% of their production if they meet all of the requirements. That, as I mentioned, is an increase over 20 to 25%. We feel that that allows industries, which we had heard from many of the studios, from many of our production houses, that sometimes the margin is just 10, 15,
Mm.
20%, 20, and if there was a little bit more of an investment, those productions didn't have to move to Arizona or New York. They could stay right here in California. So we wanted to make sure that we ensured that our industries could stay, use our wonderful state, because I have to say we have the most beautiful topography than anywhere
Absolutely.
in the world. So really it was about the dollars and cents. And so we wanted to make sure the dollars and cents were there to keep those productions. So that's essentially what the film, tax, and television credit is designed to do. For me, it was more than that.
Mm.
As you know, I also introduced a bill, and along with supporting the film tax credit program, introduced a bill so that we could also do some pretty universal monitoring and tracking of
Mm.
how we are building our workforce, making sure that we're able to collect the zip codes of where those workers are coming from so we know
Mm.
how much of our state is participating, and also to look at race and to look at gender, and to look at disadvantaged status like veterans or disability, to see also what are the ways in which we're multiplying these dollars. So we are keeping existing workforce working, but we also are incentivizing bringing new folks in. And how do we track and monitor to make sure that those goals are being met? I was successful in getting my bills out of appropriations, out of all of the committees. And so, we'll be hearing more about it on the floor. But, I am confident with working with the unions, working with the film studios. I think we all know that we can do both. We can keep our industry in California and keep it vibrant, and we can build the world's most diverse workforce. So I'm proud to say we're moving in that direction.
Great, fantastic. So, how do you see this expanded program? How do you see it supporting access for Black creatives and entrepreneurs in California's entertainment sector?
Well, I mean, for Black creatives, this is huge, right? Especially for independent films, which for the first time will be able to participate in
Mm.
the film tax credit. And we know a lot of our authentic storytelling comes from those kinds of productions. It's more of a level playing field, because there are some incentives to, one, just keep the larger studios here and that
Mm.
ecosystem here in California. And there's an opportunity for us to ensure that as we incentivize and provide more of an incentive for those who are building a diverse workforce, we know
Mm.
that means that Black creatives may be brought onto those projects, because
Right.
those large studios will want to get the maximum out of that tax incentive. So this is not a lightning bolt, right? This is something that's going to happen over time,
Mm.
but we believe that this creates the stage for increasing the participation of Black creatives, because one, there's value added in that for larger studios to do so. And two, when we want to tell our own stories and we have smaller budgets and we're
Mm.
using independent filmmaking, you now have an opportunity to participate. We also, realize that even though I represent Los Angeles, a huge and important community, we know that there are Black people all over the state.
That's
And so
right.
for the first time, we are giving additional 5%, which could get you as high as 40% of a tax credit if you're going into some of those communities across the state, places like Stockton,
Mhm.
Oakland, the East Contra Costa County, right? There's incentives for, ensuring that those studios and those productions look for those kinds of partnerships so that they can increase the amount of tax incentive that the state will offer. So all of these things, I think, are pieces to a puzzle to try to figure out, how do we remain competitive and how do we ensure that our Black filmmaking and our Black creatives and all of our Black businesses also are supported, because we know when you're filming, you need cupcakes. you,
Absolutely.
you
Right.
might need some foot massages. You might
Right.
need some, African oils and incense. You might,
Mm.
need to cater your opening dinners. You might need to host meetings, right? And this is an opportunity for identifying those Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs, in addition to our creative community,
Mhm.
right? To be able to be part of incentivizing productions across the state and really targeting our communities and our expertise to do it.
Yeah, and that also contributes to our overall economic growth, because I say this all the time, that entertainment isn't just about entertainers and creatives, it's also the nuts and bolts that help those productions to thrive and to exist. People have to eat, there has to be wardrobe, there has to be makeup, there has to be hair, there has to be supplies. So I can see how that would benefit the overall economic growth of California as a whole.
Absolutely, because in the past they would just say, you know what, we can't make the numbers pencil out. We're just going to
Mm.
go to Atlanta. So
Hmm.
now we'll say, no, you could just go over to Leimert Park and
Right.
film there, right? And support all of those businesses as well as hire the Black expertise and excellence that we know we have in terms of our Black creative community.
Hmm. Is the for independent producers, is the process different from the larger studios?
Well, there's a shift in how, and it depends on the production in terms of how much of the tax credit they can access.
Mm.
I think the idea is we want to keep the larger programs, the programs that are bringing the most diversity, the ones that
Mm.
are telling incredible stories, the ones that have partnerships. We want to incentivize those the most. And so, there is a scale for independence, but I think it's better than not being included at all. And that
Mm.
was the fight to make sure
Hmm.
that those voices were included. And look, no bill is perfect. And I want to
Right.
say that. And the wonderful thing about this, and I want to say my personal connection to this particular piece of policy, you know, um, when we started our uh, when the industry reached out to us and wanted to invite us to come and look at, how Hollywood worked and what
Mm.
Hollywood does and why the film and television tax credit was so important. It was my first year. And I went on a tour. I was myself and Assembly member Tina McKinner, who represents Inglewood. And we were on this tour together. And from the lighting to the production house to the musical score, we were so enthralled with all of the things that we saw, but one thing we didn't see were Black people. And we were very, very
Mm.
surprised
Mm.
by the lack of diversity, even though we had been investing hundreds of millions of dollars into the program. Of course, when we raised this issue, we began to meet Hollywood CPR and some of the other programs that are building pathways, and we're introduced
Mm.
to them. But our first orientation was really missing Black people. And so it raised the question, how do we ensure that all communities are able, to participate in this opportunity? And so for me, it is incredibly important that we see these two issues working together, the multiplier effect, meaning that we're bringing in folks who have not had access and who are
Mm,
often trapped in low wage jobs that create compounded poverty in our community,
mm,
right? That we bring those folks into a vibrant industry that we are growing and building. And we have seen this, in my work at the UCLA Labor Center and at the Black Worker Center. We see industries like construction sector, for example,
mm,
who over obviously hundreds of years of public and private partnership, building bridges and building roads, have really
mhm,
mastered the technique of how do we document and track through community benefits agreements opportunities for underserved communities, right? We had gotten to, I think, a place in LA County where that has become the norm, where these
mm,
community benefits agreements, along with public investment, come together to multiply and create dynamic projects. The film and television industry are new to this public-private partnership
mm.
in terms of, a construction sector, right?
Right.
They're new. And so we're beginning to really build out. And we know, the reason my long way of answering your question is that we know this is going to come back in
Hmm.
another 3 years, right? We will
Right.
continue to have to keep this industry competitive with the rest of the world, just as we have for aerospace, just as we've done it
Hmm.
for manufacturing, for auto industries. So we're going to have to do the same, right? And so that means there's an opportunity for us to strengthen these partnerships, to strengthen how we build these pathways for underrepresented populations or community benefits agreements for we have to strengthen the way we track and monitor, right, to make sure that we are on the same track, moving toward the same goal. So I'm very, very optimistic about these steps that we've taken in this iteration of the
Hmm.
film and television tax credit program, and I'm looking forward to future steps. God willing, I will be here until 2032. And so there will be several of those iterations. And I know and I'm confident that we will be able to continue to strengthen this moving forward. But I think we've landed at a very good place. And we want to see as many of our studios, our independent studio houses, we want to see them flourish.
Fantastic. And same here. I'm getting some great information and I know our listeners are too. So thank you so much for your time. So, Senator, you were talking before about ensuring that the way that the program is supposed to work, that it is. So, what are some of those safeguards that are in place to make sure that the policy is working the way that it's supposed to work?
Sure. In the past, it was a checkbox sort of thing, and it was a
Hmm.
little bit of the industry policing itself in the early days of this. In my first year working with at the time budget chair in the assembly, Phil Ting, who really took this on, and Assemblymember McKenna and others, we really tried to strengthen the ability of the California Film Commission to oversee this project. At the time, I believe there was one person dedicated to the diversity program.
Wow.
Um, and in addition, and I think a two-person team just dealing with the film and television tax program, period. And so we knew, you can't fully measure what's happening if you don't have the capacity and the team to do so.
Hmm.
And so the first year we were able to expand the film commission seats. We were able to ensure that there was a diverse representation. We were so proud to see Supervisor Holly Mitchell be appointed to the
Hmm.
commission, and Karen Horn, who was a well-known DEI expert and leader in that space within the film industry. We were so glad to see that expertise on the commission itself. And then we also really pushed and worked with the administration to add two additional positions to the diversity review staff and the overall film and television tax credit program. You know, we know we can't really fix what we can't measure. And we also knew that there were no universal tools for tracking. So,
Mm.
at the time, when I first came to the Senate, one industry would, give you some pomegranates and say, here are the pomegranates we picked. And then another would say, oh, well, here's some tomatoes we picked. And then, so you can't really measure pomegranates and tomatoes and nuts. You got to really
Hmm.
say, hey, we need universal measurements and a rubric that we can all look at and understand what is happening in terms of who is being hired, where
Mm.
are they from? What communities do they represent? And are all Californians having fair access to these amazing jobs and careers here in California? And so, that's why after the work we did in the first iteration with expanding the capacity of the Film Commission, in this session, I'm really focusing on the metrics and the rubric for oversight and
Mm.
what are those universal tools that we can look across the productions and the recipients of the tax credit, no matter big or small, and really tell a story, right, of how we
Mm.
are creating these jobs, who's getting them, how are they benefiting, and what like amazing productions we are putting out for the world to see in terms of the stories that we tell. So I say that is how it's different from years past. We're not just checking a box. We actually have real staff. We actually now have a metrics for how we can have some universal reporting. And now the numbers will come to the legislature. So in the past, that didn't happen. And so we'll actually be able to look back and monitor this process. And I want to say it's not, Keith, it's not punitive.
Mm.
I'm not here. I don't think we ever want to fine or any studio production, or any television show. That is
Mm.
not the goal. The goal is to use the data to show where we can make it better and where we can
Mm.
build the partnerships and link people up, organizations, institutions together to be able to ensure those gaps get closed. So for
Mhm.
me, data is very important in helping us understand how do we make it better. And that data will help us when it's time for this expansion, right, to be
Mhm.
reviewed and to see where do we go, in the next phase of this very important tax credit program. So I'm very, very excited, as I said, about where we are and the tools that we have to govern better, right?
Mhm.
Because this public-private partnerships means we have to govern this better. Californians want to know when we're spending this
Mhm.
level of money that we are seeing concrete impact on their lives across communities. We don't want to see the stark winners and losers. We think
Mm.
everyone can win out of the film and television tax credit program. So very, excited to say that now we have new measures to make that happen.
Yes. I also want to talk to you about, in addition to the entertainment tax credit program, also, you also are just announced efforts to designate historic South Los Angeles as a Black cultural district.
Yes,
What
yes.
inspired you to pursue this, and why right now?
Well, I'm an organizer, and organizers deal with problem, conditions, crossroads, and solutions, right? That's
Hmm.
that's the that's how we think. And so I was introduced to the cultural districts while being on a budget committee, and
Mm.
I oversee sub four with the chair. And that's where all of the government programs come to us. And I found that there was a state designated cultural district program. There were 14 cultural districts in the state. Um, None of them represented Black culture in
Hmm.
our state, and
None.
none, and only one
Wow.
in LA County, which happened to be Little Tokyo. And
Wow.
it really was shocking to me. And I could not, given South Central, the community that I represent, where we have tens of thousands of cultural assets,
Mm.
um, that would be the case. And so, because of the budget surplus, many of those districts in past years had received tens of millions of dollars to expand their cultural programming. And I felt as I came in during a budget deficit, that there was a real need to reopen this
Mm.
question of cultural districts, to create an opportunity, even in a deficit, to open up cultural districts, especially for communities that would be the backyard of the Olympics,
Mm.
right? The Olympics
Mm-hmm.
is right in our backyard. The World
Right.
Cup is right in our backyard. Millions of visitors will be in our communities for years, not before, during, and after the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics. And so, how could we establish this, I mean, iconic cultural district where we have Nipsey Hussle, where we have John Singleton, Issa Rae, Barbara
Mm.
Morrison,
Mm-hmm.
Dwight Dribble. I mean, our jazz, our hip hop, Debbie Allen and Lula Washington are in my district.
That's right.
We've got the Faith Dome, West Angeles, the largest Church of God in Christ church in the country. You know, these are the cultural assets that California has. We have two radio stations, KBLA and KJLH,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Who has that in Black communities? We have four Black newspapers. Who has that? Oakland, I don't care. Harlem doesn't have it.
Right.
Chicago doesn't have it. LA is ground zero for Black culture. And if you want an experience, if you really want to experience Black culture with real social assets, you've got to come to South Central Los Angeles. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
we have a story to tell. I think we have a real direct pathway for tourism for people who
Mm.
come to California. They don't have to drive on the 10 freeway from Venice,
Right.
cross us to go to LA Live. And I love LA Live because that's also part of my district. But
Right.
LA Live needs a South Central that is also vibrant and can keep tours to our tourists here longer to get us taste of what all of what California has to offer. And I want to also say, Black visitors spend billions of dollars here in the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see themselves when they come to California.
Absolutely.
They want to experience the food, the music, the dance, the culture, the hair, the jewelry. They want all of that. And so, really important for me to support opening up the opportunity for South Central to apply, which we are in the process of applying for that
Mm-hmm.
California state designated title. And I was able to get $2.5 million to help us build the infrastructure for the
Mm-hmm.
cultural district, because we are all working to keep individual assets together. We don't have one large table that represents the interest of those assets. We need to build a ground zero for raising dollars for our
Mm.
cultural assets, and also fighting against the aggressive displacement of Black
Mm-hmm.
people in places like Crenshaw and Leimert, in View Park and Baldwin Hills, down into the southeast side of our district, where homes are selling for $2 million, you know, on Normandy and 42nd, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
got to begin to really figure out how we use these assets as an economic development strategy. So I'm excited about this first step of the designation. And then I want to be about using this infrastructure to promote globally
Mm.
this cultural district everywhere. We want Essence, we want Ebony,
Yes.
we want everybody to have an ad about the South Central Historic Black Cultural District and come vacate with us. We have a number of, we don't have as many hotels, although we have two
Mm-hmm.
hotels that are planned to be built in the Crenshaw Mall area, but we have a kaleidoscope of Airbnbs that give really beautiful experience
Mm.
for folks who want an affordable travel and lodging to stay in the cultural district. So we have a story to tell, we have an experience to give. And so we have to use this cultural district, particularly in this moment as we're going to welcome the world to our community. We want them to understand that this is a very special place.
Mm.
We have very special people, and it's like no other thing they will experience in California, and they have to come. That's what the cultural district is about. It's about, you know, promoting, and it's also about raising the resources that we need to ensure that we keep our assets, Black space
Mm.
protected, not just for in Los Angeles, but really for all of California, because we are the last community standing in a real way.
Yes. Wow. Senator, how can everybody find out more information about the film tax credit program, and then also more about your work on establishing your area as a historical Black culture district?
Well, please follow me on Instagram at Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas. There's also a Lola Smallwood-Cuevas. You could always follow me on Instagram. We post everything that we're doing. You can also reach out to our website to make sure that you can sign up for my newsletter and see all of the new goings on here in the district. And that is Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas at sd28.ca.gov.
All right. Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas, thank you so much for your time and
Thank you,
sharing some
Keith.
very, very important information that will benefit not only the entertainment industry, but also Black folks within the creative space. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Take care now.
You too.
You are Black in the Green Room with me, your host, Keith Underwood. And this is your spot for real talk about entertainment with entertainers, creatives, and showbiz professionals.